In the early days of Buddhism, monastics didn't live communally except during rainy season. And so they mostly didn't practice together. That way they didn't have to put too much burden on the families from whom they were receiving the leftovers that they lived on. Monks and nuns only assembled when the moon was new or full. Then they would report on whether or not they had broken any of the multiplicity of precepts that they lived by. 2,700 years later or so, we are continuing this tradition by meeting on or around the full moon days to retake the Bodhisattva vows and precepts together. The ceremony begins by our repenting what we have done in our entire past with, of course, all my ancient twisted karma from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born through body, speech, and mind, I now fully avow. What karma simply means, of course, is that we are affected by whatever we do, whether good or bad. We have a problem with it, with karma, especially when doing things under the influence of greed, hate, and delusion, the so-called three hindrances or poisons. Our wanting what we want and not wanting what we don't want, and not caring either way, can lead to our doing harm to others and to ourselves. However, we may not recognize this because acting for ourselves alone through what we say, do, or think can seem so ordinary. Nevertheless, our avowing, which is of course openly confessing, to the accumulation of ancient twisted karma that comes from taking care of ourselves first, can remind us that acting out of karma is what causes us to suffer. What we can do about our self-created karma comes later in the ceremony, but next we offer our respect to what seemingly is those who have come before us in practice. This is what today's topic is about. With Shakyamuni being perhaps the only Buddha that we know of, it may not appear to us to make much sense to pay homage to a list of unrecognizable past Indian Buddhist dignitaries. This is not the case, however, in that the function of this list is fundamentally to portray the stages that we pass through in doing meditation. We begin by paying homage to the 7 Buddhas before Buddha. 7 seems an arbitrary set number in that there are no historical records of such Buddhas. Moreover, sutras can vary with respect to how many of these previous Buddhas there were. And anyway, kalpas of time are said to pass between the appearance of each. What these previous Buddhas are representative of, for us, is the Buddha nature that we and all things have always had. There being Buddhas before Buddha also teaches us that our Buddha nature cannot be said to have begun with or ended with Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni, of course, is the second Buddha that we pay homage to. and doesn't need introduction here, of course. The third is Maitreya Buddha. He is said to reside in the highest of heavens in order to be able to return to earth when an age comes in which Buddhism has completely disappeared. While seeming comparable then to the second coming predicted in other world religions, Maitreya Buddha's continued existence also points to the Buddha nature being within us. Taken together, these 9 Buddhas of the past, present, and the future stand for the possibility of becoming enlightened. Our Buddha nature being who we are, who we have been, and who we will be. It makes sense that Suzuki Roshi said that Soto Zen stresses realizing Buddha nature more than it does becoming enlightened, although, of course, they stand for the same thing. The next 3 personages being paid homage to are not Buddhas, but Bodhisattvas, which are, of course, translated means enlightened beings. But this represents particular stages of our practice. The first is Manjushri Bodhisattva, a statue of whom is often found in the center of zendos, as it is in ours. He stands for sitters who, no longer living under the influence of likes and dislikes, have had a glimpse of their Buddha nature, and as a result have begun to have compassion for the suffering of others, and the wisdom beyond wisdom, prajna, and having the wisdom beyond wisdom, prajna, to help those others with. The next Buddha, Samantabhadra, stands for those practitioners who, rather than by trying not to create karma, no longer have to, and instead live by the vows they have taken. They focus on either acting in samsara to take care of others through the use of prajna, or focus on practicing samadhi and becoming closer to their Buddha nature. Thus, their entire practice is divided between living in form for others and being in deepening emptiness when continuing to sit. Avalokiteshvara, the third Bodhisattva honored, you know of course, as the one who declares at the opening of the Heart Sutra that all 5 skandhas are empty. As such, he represents the final stage of bodhisattvahood, the one in which form and emptiness come together. In China, Avalokiteshvara also became considered to take the form of the goddess Kuan Yin, who could be called on to come to our aid in the 6 realms of existence that we humans are said to cycle through in daily life. Those of heavenly beings, rivaling deities, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and residents of hell. These are taught early in practice so that we can realize that there's some possibility in thinking about being one person when we are all 6 of these on our daily life, once we come to see them or experience that. Some iconography of these 6 realms portrays Kuan Yin as being in each of them. but just as our Buddha nature is wherever we are. She accordingly can be shown as having more than 2 and up to 1,000 arms, showing the many ways that she possesses to aid us when called upon. Those practitioners in this Bodhisattva stage will be open enough to help others no matter who they are or where they are. Homage is finally paid to the succession of ancestors, that those who are taking precepts in this year will join when receiving this is a new word for you, kechi miyaku, that translates as bloodline, but it's a document on which is written the names of all the teachers in the 90-some generations between us and Shakyamuni Buddha. The next to last names on the document will be Jane and mine, and your documents will be Jane and mine, and the names of you who are taking the precepts will be the last ones, with a line going from you back on the document back to Shakyamuni Buddha. This demonstrates your nature to ultimately be the same as Shakyamuni's. After this in a ceremony, of course, we take the Bodhisattva vows, the 3 refuges, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the pure precepts, and the 10 grave precepts. As with the repentance and the homages covered above, each section in the ceremony reminds us of why we are practicing and encourages us to continue to do so. Only if we keep sitting Zazen will who we really are become clear. Well, thank you very much. Here we go. All right, here we are. Okay. So do you have any questions or comments?
Surely there.
This looks like John, yes?
Good morning. I was hoping that you could maybe give some examples of body, speech, and mind action, and how those correspond to the different stages of our day that you mentioned. That each day we go through samsara, and we lead the lives of different people every day. Can you explain and just a little bit more about that and so forth?
Well, let me reach behind me. I have to get up actually, but well, I guess I won't. Anyway, first, one of the things. Thank you, John. Of course, is those 6 realms, which are realms of ourselves. When we're really happy, everything's going along perfectly. We feel, oh, this is the way life ought to be, and that's of course being a heavenly being. The next realm, however, are deities also, but they're called rivaling deities, and that is they are people who are very ambitious and want to get ahead, and no matter what happens, and so they are competitive. And these in the rivaling deities aren't in heaven, but they are right. They're trying very hard to get there, and they fight with each other as if that would help them to do that. Humans are ourselves. the quality of humans is doubting. It's ignorance, of course, but it's not. But it's doubting. The quality of animals is just living for sensual satisfactions. The hungry ghosts are people who are envious. They're pictured as having very big bellies and very skinny necks, and sometimes living actually standing in water, and they cannot drink because they are unable to drink because their throats are so narrow. But this stands for being envious, of wanting things that other people have, and they can't have them because they aren't their things. And the last realm, which is the realm of hell, and that's the realm of anger. That's the realm in which everything is really feels bad, and of course, it has hell. But how these relate now is through the precepts. So as you know, the precepts, the gray precepts, of course, there are 8, but number 3, 4, and 5, I've forgotten which is which in this case, but they represent things that we do, mistakes that we made in thought, in speech, and in action, and these represent those body, speech, and mind. So those are the 3 ways that we have to make mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with making mistakes per se, but we create karma for ourselves, and in addition, and puts us even further away from the path that we hope to be on. Doesn't exactly answer your question, John, but anyway, there are more details for you.
No, that was great. That was kind of exactly what I was looking for, actually. And so it would seem then that the precepts are there to be a guide for our achieving heavenly being. But at the same time, though, also understanding that we as humans are going to pretty much, no matter what we do, at some point during our day, have moments of these other realms. But it's important, rather than to just go about our days mindlessly churning through these, rather than to understand when this happens, take notice of it, be present of it, and to act skillfully from there. Is that kind of yes?
It's a little bit different. And where it's different is all 6 realms, once again, well, you don't need to hear them again, all 6 realms are equal. It's not like being in heaven. I mean, we hope to, and we desire not to suffer. And the solution to suffering is what Buddha said we suffer, and that goes from number 1 of the 4 Noble Truths and jump to number 4, and we do it by practicing the precepts, of which those are the ways that we can start doing that. Because we have to look at ourselves, and these things are not things that you must do. They're ways of looking at yourselves. But going back to the beginning, what I was to this answer is we aren't trying to become heavenly beings, because happiness, like everything else, is fleeting. And so there's no way we can avoid not being happy all the time. But we should realize that if we do that, it's not going to work, because finally in this heaven, people do use up their time in heaven, and often they drop off the edge and go straight down to the opposite side, to hell. You may find that to yourself in your own. In my experience, I found that to be true. Everything is perfect, and then bingo, things fall apart.
So
Actually, that's
it seems like it
and
really
we,
back to attachment. It really gets
yeah.
all back to attachment. No attachment to wanting to be a heavenly being, and no attachment to samsara or animal or any of that, but rather than just an understanding that they are there.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah. And understanding that they are there because they are not like, don't kill people. I mean, when I was a Catholic, that's what I thought don't kill means. Don't kill people. Okay. But in Buddhism, and it'll take another lecture to talk about that. But anyway, it means something quite different. It does mean that. It does mean that. But that isn't the point. You can extend it to mean all things. All, of course, animals being the same, but of course that's difficult within a lot of cultures. You cannot avoid that. They could in India. That was just their way of life for most people. And so you look at the things you do in your life, and you're trying to see how you cause yourself to suffer. And those 6 things. And also the three hindrances that I already mentioned today, they also are ways that we cause ourselves to suffer. And so all these things are just ways that you can see, oh, that's what I'm doing. That's what's happening here. And by doing that, you gradually, with the help of Zazen, change your life. Because Zazen, even though Zazen, of course, can't have everything else in it, because in Zazen also, the 6 worlds are there, but can be there. But in Zazen, we slow down, our mind becomes clearer. Even if it doesn't, it's okay, because you're looking at your mind. And Zazen tells you, because that's what it's all about, is looking at your mind. And the real essence of your mind is clarity. So both those things, taking care of things in your life and looking at your mind, which of course is one of the, thought, body, speech, and mind. Mind is there. Okay, I'm going on here. Rachel.
Thank you, Peter. I think you probably answered it when you answered John, but the 3 bodhisattvas, we hardly ever hear about Samantabhadra. They're not linear. It's not like you're one and then you graduate and you get a little of the next and then you get another of the, all 6 are present. Is it just different manifestations of the nature, and they just take on, they have the aspect, because they do seem so differentiated in an almost deliberate manner. I just wondered.
Sure, I went through those rather quickly because my talk was just a short talk. But no, they actually do stage. There are those 3 represent stages of being a bodhisattva, and they are not. Even though it looks like Kuan Yin I mentioned the word goddess, but in fact it's all about us, and they do go in stages, even though some of the things are the same. There's an opening of in Manjushri, it's an opening of compassion and prajna, based upon having had a glimpse of your Buddha nature. And Samantabhadra is also sometimes called the Bodhisattva of merit, because it tells you about the things that happen when you are, as it were, an enlightened being. because having enlightened being, in this case, just means having had a glimpse of it. But that glimpse is very important. That's why Kensho is so important also. But for us, it's our Buddha nature. In either case, you won't see a flash of lightning in enlightenment, and you won't see a face of Buddha when you recognize your own Buddha nature, of course. So those are all, everything here is a matter of images. But therefore, when you become a serious bodhisattva, let's say, then only two things particularly are happening, because it represents emptiness is emptiness and form is form. Emptiness is just zazen. And what happens is your experience of ordinary life in samsara is only there in order to help others. Now, of course, we always remain human. We always have the same qualities, but something changes. And this is the middle phase of that, in which I didn't mention this really strongly before, but in which you're either focused just in being where you are in order to take care of others, and yourself is included, because you're still practicing, and the still practicing is with practicing, and your depth of your samadhi becomes deeper. Sukhi Roshi never talked about that, but in other things, there are like eight forms of meditation. We don't differentiate them, but certainly Vajrayana does, and it goes along with the okay. And then the last one is getting very, very close. When when Avalokiteshvara says all five skandhas are empty, it represents a union of form and emptiness. I've mentioned this before, even recently, and the second, third, and fourth skandhas are the skandhas of ego consciousness and the skandhas of differentiation. When they aren't there, form, which is the outside, and your clear mind, which is emptiness, they become one. And so this is the stage, the final stage of being a bodhisattva. And past that, then you enter Buddhahood, which is not covered in this, by the way, so much. Not in my talk, but also in that. Because in that case, there's no longer any reason for Dharma. There's no longer any reason to separate form and emptiness. It's all part of one life, which is yours. And so therefore, you just get rid of all the chains these silver chains that we put around our necks like athletes, gold chains, but we get rid of them because even they are heavy. Okay? So there's another long answer here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment? Jane, what do you think?
Well, I think you're doing. John, just going back to your question, I'd just like to add more to what Peter said. That taming the self is our primary beginning to see our Buddha nature, and that we can't see it because the biggest cloud covering it is our own ego. So doing it constantly through body, speech, and mind, taming our speech, taming our thoughts, taming our actions is our biggest job all the time, whatever realm we happen to be running through. It's sort of like straightened us up when we realize what we're doing. When we're wandering through a realm and we're looking outside trying to find reasons, rather than just recognizing we've done it ourselves. So when we're doing that, the taming of self, the taming of mind, body, and speech, and that comes about first of all through restraint. Don't say everything that comes to our mind. Don't act on every impulse. and watch our thoughts without clinging when we sit. So little by little, we're taming it all the time. And this is our whole being that we believe in so firmly. And when we tame ourselves, the belief sort of gets diluted because we don't act so completely self-centeredly when we're working to tame ourselves. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Mitch?
Sorry, I clicked the wrong button.
Yeah.
I was so excited to be able to talk to you. How many questions do I get?
7 or 8.
So when you talked about the
Chris
last
is not
stages
here.
where form and emptiness come together, is that, and Spencer brought this up, I think last week, does that have to do with the ox when the farmer just goes back to his village? Is that bringing form and emptiness together?
That's a good question, and yes, that's true. But in the case of the eye-shortening pictures, it particularly stresses coming down off the mountain with your understanding, and then helping other people.
But you just go back to your life. I mean,
So
we
therefore,
should just live our lives, right?
You go back to your life, exactly right. And so therefore, the form and emptiness combining would be the 9th picture, 8th or 9th picture.
Okay. Second question.
Okay.
What Jane just said, Jane Sensei said, and I've always been confused about the Eightfold Path and the precepts and the perfections, the paramitas. I mean, how do these all come together? It seems that when we talk about the precepts, we forget to practice the Eightfold Path, and it's always confused me.
Well, of course, the precepts are exactly a part of the Eightfold Path. It depends upon, Jake, and you can answer in a second.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's how you practice the precepts, is by following the Eightfold Path.
Okay.
It's really learning to tame body, speech, and mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why it's about each of those.
Can I ask a question about body, speech, and mind?
Sure.
Okay, I'm my training's in psychology. If you take a projective test like a Rorschach, they put that up, and you have this weird picture, and you then interpret the picture, which actually is revealing yourself and how you think. So I've always thought that body, speech, and mind were the only things that we can see of our practice to judge where we are or judge how we're following the precepts. We have our body, we listen to our speech, we watch the way our mind works. You said that sitting in Zazen is just watching your mind. So does that part of body, speech, and mind? It's the only thing that we can really see.
Yeah, Jane is the body, speech, and mind expert in the family. So,
No,
I'm not going there, Peter.
It's like going back to zero, to work with body, speech, and mind. It's the 3 things you can actually work with and change because they're within your ability to change. You can restrain your speech. You can stop clinging to your thoughts. You can be careful of the things you do and what your actions are based on, thought or emotion or whatever. So I think it's just simple. It's like eliminating as much as possible and then just starting with 0 or 1.
But they're an outcome of where we are in our practice and where we are as human beings.
Yes.
So that's what we can see of. Am I on the wrong?
And no, that's what you have right now. If you look, what can you start to change right now? Not forgetting your past and all the other stuff. You can actually change how you speak, how you are influenced by your thought, and how your actions come out of too much thinking and too much speaking. So you can practice restraint with those three things in your life. You can change so much of your life just by doing that. So it's just getting rid of everything, that you think of as absolutely necessary to be who you are. Last night we were reading something by Shohaka Okumura that was interesting. He talked about the fact that when you get down to the place where you no longer have to be who you think you are, that really is casting off body and mind. And body and mind is what we all have to eventually do.
Yeah, well, that's self, right? Getting rid of
Yeah.
who we think we are.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you very much.
Mitch, let me just add one more thing to what you said. No, although the six paramitas, of which prajna is number 6, they also are about the practice, but they're a different way of looking at it. So they don't really combine here to what I've said today. Exactly.
Well, that was a sort of kind of that was sort of kind of a
But
digression.
but the end result is prajna.
Yeah.
Okay, so but anyway, it's kind of complicated, and the complication is not necessary here. Yeah. Yes, Sandy.
Okay. It was turning itself back off. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Um, when you talk about form and emptiness, when I see form, I also see emptiness. It's like you can't have one without the other. We wouldn't be able to have a life. We wouldn't exist without emptiness and form being one of the, each one intermeshed. There aren't they? I mean, that's kind of how I see form and emptiness, that for my lamp to exist, it has to be able to get old, it has to age, it has to change. So nothing really stays the same. We hope it is. That's one of the things most people hope for, that there would be no change, that they won't grow old. But those are the things that will happen because we're alive. And I don't know if I'm looking at it incorrectly, but that's the way it just seems to me, that you can't have one without the other. To exist, we live in this type of a world where you're young, you're just made or whatever, and then over what we perceive as time, we change and we go into another form of existence. We go into what's called death, which is just a change. The parts of our body, there are things that we have become one with the others around us. So we're always there. It's not like, a flower grows and it dies. Well, that flower put out seeds, and from it other flowers will grow. Everything is a part of each other. That's the way I see it. I don't know if that's incorrect, if I'm looking at, form and emptiness in the wrong way.
Well, it's another whole. Well, anyway, um, from one simple way to see it, Buddha nature is emptiness. But I should change it a little bit because it's a little bit different. But anyway, and so but so form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Form is form. Emptiness. Form is form, and emptiness is emptiness. Emptiness, and form is form. Also can be also sequential. So when we start, I'll just go with the beginning. So when we start, studying. We study emptiness by doing zazen. We're sitting there in form. We're just who we've always been, and then we look at that, and that's where we start out practicing. But then we go through other stages as well. But your understanding of it also is correct. That there always is emptiness, and form are always there together. But our perception is not really that way. Ultimately, our perception will be that. But until that point, when it's truly perception, it'll just be another way of thinking about it. So it'll just be thought. So in that, from what you said, it's totally accurate, but it's also both in that case, it's both form and emptiness are in the world of form.
Right. They are. That's how I see
So
it.
anyway, the questions are very good today, and so we're trying to look at all of Buddhism today, but all of Buddhism is pretty darn big.
That's right.
I'm
You
glad
lose
you're
your
here,
voice.
though.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.